First United Methodist Church. Please stand and join us as we sing Blessed Be Your Name.
But I'll say, I'm going to defend myself. Terry Harder nominated her for that. But I was really very vocally supportive and really excited. I almost wanted, well, I actually did. I wanted to do cartwheels, but we don't want to go there because you'll need therapy. But it's good to have you here this morning, and it's a true blessing to have Ron and Mary with us this morning. So welcome back home.
I just want to call your attention to a couple of announcements in your bulletin. If you find the blue sheet, it mentions the Advent study that'll be starting next Sunday. And also, the Giving Tree will be next Sunday in between services out here where we have coffee hour. And if you haven't picked up an ornament, you can still do so. Also, the yellow slip, if you feel able to just give us as much information as you would like, fill that out and put it in the offering plate. So now, if you would take a couple minutes to stand up and greet each other and maybe find somebody you don't know. Okay, if you would please come back to your seats. Yeah, that's the hardest part. Don't make me use my teacher voice. I'm sorry. Please stand. We're going to say the Psalm 100 together. And this is from the Message, so it's going to seem different, but I think it fits very well for this morning. On your feet now, applaud God. Bring a gift of laughter. Sing yourselves into his presence. Know this, God is good, and God. He made us, we didn't make him. We're his people, his well-tended sheep. Enter with the password, thank you. Make yourselves at home, talking praise. Thank him, worship him. For God is sheer beauty, all generous in love, loyal always and ever. And now, if you will remain standing as you're able, and join us in singing 10,000 Reasons, Bless the Lord.
Bless the Lord, oh my soul, worship his holy name. Sing like never before, oh my soul, I'll worship your holy name. The sun comes up, it's a new day dawning. It's time to sing your song again. Whatever may pass and whatever lies before me, let me be singing when the evening comes. Bless the Lord, oh my soul, worship his holy name.
Walk with us, God, through sharp, frosty days and bright, crunchy leaves into winter. Rest with us by warm firesides and tell us stories into the night. Take us out at night and show us the stars and fill us with wonder. Bless us and our families, our friends, and our neighbors with love and courage. And let us never forget the stranger who needs to share our wealth, our shelter, and our hope. And now please join me in the prayer that our Lord taught us. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. Amen.
You were the Word at the beginning, one with God the Lord Most High. Your hidden glory in creation, now revealed in you.
having me. It's exciting and such a pleasure to be home. Hear this word from the book of Luke 17, verses 11 through 19. On the way to Jerusalem, Jesus was going through the region between Samaria and Galilee. As he entered a village, 10 lepers approached him. Keeping their distance, they called out, saying, "Jesus, Master, have mercy on us." When he saw them, he said to them, "Go and show yourselves to the priests." And as they went, they were made clean. Then one of them, when he saw that he was healed, turned back, praising God with a loud voice. He then prostrated himself at Jesus' feet and thanked him. And he was a Samaritan. Then Jesus asked, "Were not 10 made clean? But the other 9, where are they? Was none of them found to return and give praise to God except this foreigner?" Then he said to him, "Get up and go on your way. Your faith has made you well." Please pray with me. Refresh us with your word, O God, as we hear it proclaimed this day. As you did in the beginning, send your Spirit to hover over the chaos of our frenzied and disordered souls. We may hear your truth ringing forth in a clear and unambiguous voice, your good news for ourselves and your entire world. Amen. In retirement, I've been doing something I never imagined I would do. I've been watching a lot of TV reruns, but just in the morning, right, Ron? I don't waste the whole day. In particular, I watched the first season of ER, which I've never seen, actually. And as a result, I have a new appreciation for what goes on in an emergency room daily. I've discovered that the initials ER truly reflect what an emergency room physician is faced with. The very nature of such a hospital department suggests that when you walk in its doors, there's clearly something wrong. Well, normally, not always on the TV show. The ER's doctor's job is far more straightforward than that of an internist or an oncologist. You see, ER doctors sew it up, put it in a cast, send it upstairs for surgery, give it a pill, or send it to the morgue. Once out of the ER, a patient is someone else's responsibility, typically. Someone else's worry, although emergency room physicians may someday save your life. They did mine once, actually. I served here at that time. That's another story. You will never know them like you do your family physician. And they will never know you. It's just not their job. We all sort of like that kind of anonymity, don't we? It saves us the trouble of feeling too dependent upon another human being for our well-being. It's not surprising, therefore, that 9 lepers who were healed on their way to Jerusalem responded to their restored health much as most of us would. Undoubtedly, they were overjoyed and enthusiastic about their new condition, but they chose to validate it only through the safe, established routes of human sources. They continued on to the temple, as they were told by Jesus to do, to see the priests there, who were invested with the power to officially proclaim them cured and make them ritually clean once more. This was essential if they were to reintegrate into society. And only the Samaritan leper sees that what he has experienced is more than physical healing. It is salvation itself. The health that the Samaritan leper celebrates is not just physical. It's a feeling of wholeness which he has never before experienced. It's something no priest, no doctor could measure or prescribe. And so the Samaritan returns, or in the pure Greek, he turned back. He repented to the source of his healing, to Jesus' feet, by the way, to offer praises of thanksgiving with a loud voice. I can imagine he whooped it up for joy. Let me shift gears here for a second and ask a question. What are some of the daily healing measures that God carries out in your life? In other words, have you recently remembered to thank God for a good night's sleep? Or a day of blue sky? Lately we enjoy that. The unexpected voice of a distant friend on the telephone, or even a text message. For Mozart or Bach, or whoever is your favorite. Adidas ice cream. Uncontrollable laughter or unabashed tears for Tylenol or ibuprofen. Your spouse, your children, your grandson, granddaughter. There's something about the practice of thankfulness that enlarges, blesses, restores us. It's not just words, is it? Yes, this week's gospel story, or the one I chose anyway, is of course about thankfulness. The leper's act of gratitude points to the fact that we are created to recognize life as a gift, and to find our salvation at the feet of the giver. But this passage also speaks to questions of identity, I think, questions of exclusion and inclusion, of exile and return. And this story is about the kingdom of God, although that expression is not used in the passage. It's about who is welcome and who belongs, who's invited back, who stays. As a granddaughter of immigrants, I feel these questions in my bones. They're not intellectual or abstract, they're emotional and they're urgent. What does it mean to belong? Where is home and what is my identity? Who am I? I've read of an organization that served as a halfway house with a simple rule of life, where a man who had no home could relearn how to live indoors. Who had no home, but who seriously sought to find new ways to take care of himself and relate to others. From the staff of that men's shelter, I read the story of a little community that existed under a viaduct, where there lived an aristocrat who had inherited a huge country estate and been educated at one of the finest universities in the country. The pressure of living up to all of that led him to abandon his fortune. Ridiculous, right? Who would do that? But now he walked the city street with just a few possessions in a grocery cart. His cut glass speech the only hint of where he had come from. Well, anyway, his best friend had become a working class guy from the poorest area of the region, who had dropped out of the educational system in his early teens and come to the big city to seek his fortune. The likelihood of these two men becoming close friends in a normal society was slim. But in the community under the viaduct, the very rich and the very poor found that their differences were immaterial, didn't matter, compared to their now common purpose, surviving on the streets in the cold months of the winter. Together. The lepers in our gospel story also lived in the shadows, in a no man's land, a region between where they were not cared about, much less for. Before the advent of modern medicine, there were leper colonies on the edges of most Middle Eastern towns, where the rest of society kept them for fear of contagion. You see, lepers were required to live in seclusion, and they were expected to keep their distance from passers-by. It says so in our passage even. They sported torn clothes and disheveled hair, and they announced their own contagion with loud, humiliating cries such as, "Unclean," as if that was their name. The twist in this tale is that this particular leper colony was near a village on the border between Galilee and Samaria, communities that were viciously divided. You see, the Samaritans thought of themselves as Jews. I bet most of you didn't know that. Descendants of Joseph's line instead of Judah's. Worshipping at their center of faith, not Jerusalem, but at Mount Gerizim. They were Jews nonetheless. The rest of Judaism branded Samaritans as Gentiles, lumping them in with all the other pagan religions. To Galilean Jews, of which Peter and his disciples were, Samaritans were all considered ritually unclean. Not sick or ill or leprous, but ritually unclean. And Galilean Jews would travel miles out of their way. That's why I have the map up there. Out of their way to get to southern Israel, to avoid having any contact with such pagans. Now, this wasn't just an Uber drive. This was typically on foot or by camel. Our 10th leper is a Samaritan, which isn't pointed out till late in the story. In other words, he was a double other. As you know, and maybe you don't, but Leah's secretary, Sharon Johnson, she badgers us preachers for a title. I don't know why that's so important, but I should have called my sermon today the double other. Don't tell her I said that. Marginalized by both illness and foreignness. There's little doubt that this social shunning would continue, even after the local priest declared him clean, because there was nothing that could clean a Samaritan. So Luke tells of 10 lepers who hoped against hope for healing by approaching Jesus from the dread disease that ate away at their bodies and consumed their souls. When they heard that this Jesus, this miracle worker, was nearby, they came as close as they dared and they called out to him. Jesus told them to go to the priests, and along their way, they found themselves healed. You see, when Jesus heals their leprosy, he does not merely cure their bodies, he restores their identities. He enables their return to all that makes them human, fully human: family, community, society, intimacy. In healing their withered skin and numbed limbs, Jesus released them to feel again, to embrace and be embraced, to worship in community, to reclaim all the social and spiritual ties that their disease had stolen from them. When Jesus entered that no man's land of no belonging, he handed out 10 unblemished passports. He invited 10 exiles home to turn around. Seen from this angle, the 10th leper's response to Jesus resonates a little differently, doesn't it? It's an expression of thankfulness, yes, but it's also the expression of a deeper and truer belonging, a new way of seeing, even. So what is it that the healed Samaritan's otherness enabled only him to see that his 9 companions did not? He sees that his identity, his truest place of belonging, lies at Jesus' feet. about Jesus, really. As our songs have told us this morning. The Samaritan sees that his identity, his truest place of belonging, lies at Jesus' feet. And he sees that Jesus' arms are wide enough to embrace all of who he is. Leper, foreigner, exile. 10 Samaritans dutifully stand at a distance and call Jesus Master. But only one draws close, dares intimacy. He actually fell at Jesus' feet and finds his lasting home, clinging to Jesus for a better and more permanent citizenship. Only the 10th leper moves past obedience and finds friendship. Only he discovers what happens when duty, running to the temple and the chief priest, gives way to love. And it was only to that double outsider that Jesus said, "Your faith, your turning around has made you whole." Maybe Jesus was talking about a different kind of wellness. Maybe he meant that deep-seated human divisions are much more serious of a sickness than even leprosy. That our souls can be far more sick than our bodies. Maybe he wasn't commenting on the attitude of the 9 who didn't return to him as much as on the system that would accept them and still reject the outsider. We'll never really know exactly what Jesus meant. I don't think I do, but I don't. But the challenge to our concept of the gospel and faith and healing is that they are not merely gifts for the individual, but they bring consequences and they bring responsibilities. I just finished reading a book